No. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Nadia. I am a PhD student at the Media Technology and Interaction Design group at here at KTH, and I will be presenting our project, Biomenstrual. So Biomenstrual is our main contributors were me and Marie-Louise, who is at Ajo University in Oslo, and we also had main collaborators from Konstfack, Martin Avila, a material scientist, Antonio Capezza, and Madeline Balaam, who's also in the same lab as me. And this project is, as you can kind of maybe understand by the title, is a combination of environmental and sustainability aspects and menstrual health and menstrual care. And it's really a project that spans kind of intersects design research, biodesign, feminist post-humanities, material scientists, and also kind of digital women's health and menstrual tracking. And so I think this was what drew us also to do it within NAVET and get funding by NAVET, because it's truly like multi and interdisciplinary project. And so the motivation for the project came from kind of this, you know, the ongoing, of course, climate emergency, and specifically in terms of menstrual health and menstrual care, how the intersection between menstrual care and environmental care, there's kind of an overwhelming amount of plastic products and kind of fossil fuel made materials in menstrual products. And so that was one very particular point that we were thinking of, okay, how might we design alternatives, and how might these alternatives then kind of bring us closer to connecting our menstrual health and our menstrual care with kind of the environmental care. And so as a starting point, we researched histories and kind of uses of alternative products or kind of materials that were used in menstrual care in across kind of span of different histories. And we encountered sphagnum moss. And sphagnum moss is a super absorbent moss. So it can hold up to like 25 times its own weight in water or any fluid. And it's actually been used throughout history in different indigenous communities across the world. And it was also tried to kind of market as an actual sanitary napkin. So this is a sanitary napkin that was stuffed with this dried sphagnum moss. But it kind of didn't take off, and it never kind of took off into an actual product. And so we were really fascinated by this material and kind of became acquainted with this species, and became acquainted with its properties. It's local and to Sweden and Stockholm. It's found in bogs. It's like really important for peatlands. So it's a big part of creating peatlands, and peatlands are a big carbon sink. So the elimination of peatlands, so basically removing a lot of this moss, causes about, I think 6% of all kind of greenhouse emissions. So it's a very, very important species. And so we were really, like, this kind of curious kind of connection was something that fueled this project, and for us to speculate on what if we made kind of more modern or futuristic alternative menstrual products with these materials. And so apart from moss, we also included wheat gluten, actually, and we became interested in this material because our collaborator Antonio who's working as a material scientist here at KTH, he's been working with this, with wheat gluten, which is like a co-product from the wheat industry in Sweden, and Sweden is one of the biggest producers of wheat. It can also be turned into kind of this foam kind of material that can also act as a super absorbent, so it absorbs liquids. And this contrasts greatly with the moss, which, you know, the moss is more as like it grows at a very slow scale. It's very much something that we don't want to kind of harvest in mass quantities. And the wheat gluten, on the other hand, is kind of a product of the wheat kind of industry and agriculture that already exists here in Sweden. So those were the two kind of protagonists of our project. And so we basically took those materials into our own kitchens and experimented with kind of biodesign practices, making bioplastics, mixing it with different things like agar and kind of trying to combine them together. And we were doing this, of course, like during the pandemic. So Marie Louise and I were kind of sharing little like cooking classes, trying to make our own prototypes of menstrual pads. And so here's another image of kind of how our kitchens became this combination of kind of lab, kind of bringing in some like lab glassware into the kitchen, but also making our own tools and kind of making different practices. So it's very much, it's a design research project where we kind of design different practices or different tools and interventions that helped us create these products. So for example, we learned how to seal bioplastic together using iron. We 3D printed some different molds or vacuum formed molds of shapes and put the sphagnum moss and the gluten within there. And so these resulted in biodegradable menstrual pads, and here are some examples. And this kind of, the specific aesthetics that we explored, the specific shapes and forms, were also kind of intentional to provoke and prompt discussions on kind of cleanliness or like purity, and like in contrast to normal menstrual products that are commonly white and kind of pristine, we introducing these kind of biological materials. We wanted to prompt ideas of having these materials close to the intimate areas of the body, and kind of, so they became these kind of speculative artifacts. And so together with menstrual blood then collected on the pads, they would then be kind of biodegraded. This was kind of the imaginative or speculative aspect that we included in this project. And so together with kind of exploring these materials, we also found and encountered kind of histories or practices of people using their own menstrual blood to fertilize plants. And so because actually menstrual blood contains a lot of the common nutrients that are available in common fertilizers, off-the-shelf fertilizers such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So we thought that this relationship that was super curious and interesting and hasn't been really explored, hasn't been clinically studied, but we thought it would be a really interesting starting point as a design project. And so then we also kind of created different tools, 3D printed receptacles and objects that would then be kind of used to encourage someone to actually collect and dilute their menstrual blood. So this was kind of another thread of the project together with the biodegradable pads. And within that, then we kind of imagined this kind of circular process where the products would be kind of made from sustainable materials, would then be used, would then be biodegraded, and then would kind of contribute to a whole new set of species and growth of new materials. So this was this imagined kind of circular process that we had. And from a theoretical perspective, we also kind of, this circularity then is what really made us think a lot with feminist posthumanities and thinking with scholars like Donna Haraway on where our bodies kind of become this, how would you say, extension. Our bodies become an extension, extending into the soil, for example, or places where then our bodily materials, our bodily fluids would get kind of, in compost or things like that. So from a more theoretical perspective, we were thinking a lot with these kind of perspectives. And we wrote a paper on this for the CHI conference last year. So if you're interested in learning or reading more about the kind of theoretical aspects, we have a paper that we wrote. And I think I've just breezed through this presentation really quickly, but I wanted to kind of show what happened after the project. So the project was only just 6 months funded research, but then it's really kind of like boomed into a lot of other things. We had, at the end of the project, we had a solo exhibition in Frihamnstorget, which is a gallery that I really recommend. It's really lovely. You get like a whole container, and those are the images that are featured in the book actually of this exhibition, where we kind of wanted to display some of the pads, prototypes, and kind of bring in this, bring these speculative prototypes that were speculative, but they were also very much real and material. So to bring these to people, to kind of get people's experiences or reactions of yeah. We were included in 2 other exhibitions, one on menstruation, which was also really, really interesting. It was also documented in SVT and things like that. So we're really happy to be featured in that exhibition. And we've also published in peer-reviewed conferences and journals. We have an upcoming book chapter in a new book on pedagogical book on more than human design and practice, and this is upcoming this year, which we're really excited about. We are featured also in design magazines, and in general, I just also wanted to say that it kind of, this was at the beginning of my PhD, so it kind of like catapulted my interest also in this field, and I'm in my PhD, although I'm focusing on a bit different things as well, but this is kind of like flowed into my PhD, so I think NAVET was a really nice way to get that little bit of funding that then I used to kind of continue research. So again, here are some other photos of the exhibition and some samples of all the different kind of materials that we had. And then also, just to say, we also continue doing workshops with people to kind of not keep it so much as this individual practice that you would do, but maybe imagining how you would get together with people and make your own menstrual products. And then it really opened up for really speculative ideas, like people would grab some moss and put it in like a menstrual cup mold, and kind of it you know, working with these materials was super fun. So that's it. I think yeah, I just thanks to NAVET again, and thanks for listening. I don't know if there's time for questions or anything.
Yeah, it depends. If we have the second presenter, because I don't see her, and she hasn't sent me slides either. She the program. Elena Westerlin, I don't see her. No, here. Then there is time for questions. Why not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or thoughts, or just anything that came up. Yeah.
I would just say something that I noticed in your last image. So there were maybe even more men than women.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's great.
Yeah, we write about that a bit in the paper on kind of this how this kind of collaborative making was really spurring it allowed people that didn't even experience menstruation to be included and to kind of, you know, speculate together, and people that did menstruate maybe brought their own experiences to the table, but it was really this kind of accepting, I guess, a plurality of bodies, and like, you know, even within us who menstruate, we have very, very different experiences. So
exactly. I wondered if we created a dialogue, like in questions and like curiosity.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Curiosity, I think, is one thing that we wrote about in this paper a lot, and just, I think the speculative nature of the project allowed you also to be very curious, but very open to like imagining new, just, I don't know, reframing the way we see menstruation in society as well. Like there was one that someone redesigned a chair to be covered in moss rather than actually a pad that you would take with you, but that the furniture would be adapted to menstruating people. And that, I think, is a really interesting like shift in like how we just live and design the world around us, rather than how we kind of carry these products with us or things. Yeah.
Did the COVID situation affect positively or negatively your work? You have this home lab, and it seemed like it was maybe more effective way of testing stuff than being at the office answering emails.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't say like positive or negative, I guess, but I would say definitely changed the way we did design work. But I don't know. I wonder if we would have done stuff in the kitchen so much if we hadn't been at home, because I guess we don't really have access to maybe like a food lab or things like that, depending on which, you know, lab or where you are. But at least in our lab, we don't have like a sink or like a food lab to do those kind of experiments. So it really was something that we had to do in our kitchens. And I think that also affected the ways in which we like imagined yes, this would actually be something that, you know, I would maybe be doing or creating and then actually wearing these pads at home, or I think it helped a lot to bring the situatedness and our own subjectivity to it by doing it in our own kitchens and our own homes. Yeah.
And has it had a lasting effect on how you work after that?
I don't know, because I think we figured out ways to kind of spontaneously make these kind of things in different ways. Like this is a workshop that's done in a gallery that could very much be some space like this. And then we just figured out, you know, you have to bring a kettle or a pot or like a hob, and then so we kind of then became more and more mobile, I guess, in different ways. And now I would say that, you know, if I were to make these things again or host workshops, I wouldn't do it maybe at home, but yeah, I don't know. But that's a really interesting reflection. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure you've been thinking about these things. So I was just wondering, like, what is the next step for you? Like, given like how this work can fit into.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think there's so many different kind of new threads that kind of came from here, and so I mean, I mentioned there was one motivation of kind of just really directly wanting to make more biodegradable, sustainable menstrual products, but then there's also the kind of the more, I guess, theoretical or more kind of maybe philosophical kind of branch of like wanting to, or this vision of like rethinking practices, rethinking menstruation as something connected to the environment somehow. So I think that has really impacted, I don't know, some like values and things that I've taken with me to my like PhD and to my like research and everything else. And what we didn't focus on so much in this project that I'd really like to focus on in the future is actually how menstrual health is involved with like environmental pollution and toxicities and things like that. More on the side of not just, you know, yeah, you have these plastics, but there's also like the kind of more air pollution or water pollution or things like that, and how these, you know, disrupt endocrine systems and then in very less tangible ways kind of touch our bodies over time and affect reproduction over the long term, and how then that for me is like this big kind of reframing of reproduction in general. So with one of the quotes that I brought up is like reproduction expands more than just I am a reproductive individual, but it's kind of like this, you know, everything we put out into the chemicals and stuff we put out into the world and come back at us and affect our reproduction. I don't know. I think those things are kind of what stayed with me, and I'd like to explore further. So there's lots of little threads. Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think that's good. I've had a lot of time, I feel. Thank you.